Thank you all for coming along this evening. As you can see, we've got a capacity crowd tonight, which speaks volumes to how enthusiastic and prepared women are to take on influential roles in our industry, particularly when they are supported to gain additional skills and encouraged to put their hand up for opportunities which allow them to demonstrate their strengths and talents in meaningful ways. Which is why the Film Victoria Women's Leadership Development Initiative, established in partnership with the Natalie Miller Fellowship, is so timely and important. And I do want to pause here for a moment to focus on the Natalie Miller Fellowship and congratulate all the wonderful women who had the foresight to establish the fellowship back in 2011 with a clear purpose of assisting women to develop their leadership skills. This has not been a small undertaking, and the work they have done since in raising funds and promoting the importance of women as leaders has been amazing. And of course, Natalie herself is such a great role model for all of us. Last November, she was acknowledged with the SPA Lifetime Achievement Award for her contribution to the industry over the past 5 decades. Doesn't look like nearly that long, I can tell you. Natalie continues to be a powerhouse in the Australian screen community and a great advocate for women across the sector. The Natalie Miller Fellowship was clearly the perfect partner for Film Victoria to help establish this initiative. Together, we aim to build on what the NMF has already started, but in this instance, the initiative is fully funded by Film Victoria, specifically so we can assist women in Victoria. The intent is to provide assistance to those women who have advanced their careers and are reasonably well established in the industry. Many of these women are thinking about their next steps because they want to ensure that they are the ones who will be approached to hold and be successful in positions of leadership and influence in the future. If this initiative can give women the support they need to step into these roles with confidence and a genuine awareness of the value they bring to any discussion or decision-making process, we will undoubtedly see a stronger, more dynamic and robust screen industry. An industry creating more diverse and interesting content, particularly but not exclusively for the female audience, and catering for a wider demographic than currently exists. And this can only be a good thing. According to the latest ABS stats, which are June 2012, so they must get onto that, there were 11.3 million males and 11.4 million females residing in Australia. So we outweigh the males by 100,000 or so, and yet the balance of women in key creative and decision-making roles in no way is even close to 50-50 representation. And that's despite the known fact that women are the key drivers of consumer behaviour. In Australia, there are not enough women making decisions on boards or occupying roles as senior executives in media companies, as programmers, distributors, marketers, or being supported as key creatives, such as writers and directors, to make content for any audience. The impacts of this are obvious to all of us in the room. This doesn't make good business sense, and it has to change. The current gender imbalance is an issue that is clearly at the forefront of many discussions on a state and federal level for our industry, as it is for other areas of business. Screen Australia's newly launched Gender Matters suite of initiatives is a positive step forward. Other states have also taken steps to address this, as has Film Victoria. 2 weeks ago, we launched the Film Victoria Women in Games Fellowship for women working in the games sector. And launching the Film Victoria Women in Leadership's Development Initiative tonight, in conjunction with the Natalie Miller Fellowship, is another proactive way we can help drive change. I want to encourage all women working in the film and television sector to think about their career aspirations, to visualise themselves as making an influential contribution to our industry, whether it's 2, 5, 10 or more years down the track. If this initiative is not quite right for you at this time, look out for what other opportunities might be out there now, or what you might need or want to do to access these and other opportunities in the future. Our industry needs you to use your voice, your skills and your intelligence, as does the Australian business community more broadly. You have the power to make a difference in small and big ways, to take the conversation up a notch, to realise the important role women play in the future well-being of our society. We all know media is the most powerful of tools for getting those messages out and driving change. Current and future generations will be strongly influenced by the values, attitudes and behaviours they see on their screens. As women, we can have an important role in shaping what gets made and seen. Therefore, we can have an influential role in helping us become a better society, where compassion, tolerance, understanding and diversity of race, sex, religion, ability and possibly even more balanced political decisions are embraced, and also help Australian screen businesses to improve their bottom line, a situation where everybody wins. So on that note, I'm now going to introduce Sue Maslin, who's going to say a few words on behalf of the Natalie Miller Fellowship team. An award-winning screen producer and passionate advocate for gender equality in the industry, Sue's latest triumph is The Dressmaker, out on DVD today and still on cinema screens after 16 weeks. Headed by an all-female creative team, adapting a critically acclaimed novel by a female author, it recently surpassed 20 million at the Australian box office, becoming the 11th highest grossing Australian film of all time, which deserves another round of applause. Sue is a terrific example of how tapping into female leadership and business intuition can deliver content that resonates with a broad audience and builds the health of our industry. Please join me in welcoming Sue.
Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate that. The Natalie Miller Fellowship is really about recognising and nurturing the next generation of women leaders in the Australian screen industry and our community that we're all part of, and inspiring them, inspiring you to reach the very top of your fields. By urging more women to take on positions of leadership, roles that allow them to make a real difference, we not only address the gender imbalance that's still evident at the top, but we drive better company performances and greater innovation, more choices on screen. I mean, that has to be better for everybody if we have a more dynamic, diverse and robust screen industry. So on behalf of the Natalie Miller Fellowship, many of whom are here tonight, and Natalie Miller, the inspiration for us behind this program in the second row here, so please make yourself known to them in the course of the evening. We welcome the Women in Leadership Development Initiative, a wild idea, the acronym. It's a direct way of ensuring that more Victorian women will have a seat at the table of the key decision-making that drives this industry. Here in Victoria, but also nationally, we want to see more Victorian women at that table. It can only be a good thing in the long term. I encourage you to think about applying. Hear the guidelines tonight. Think about applying, or think about your colleagues that you think have the appropriate skill levels and industry experience to apply. This is the time, really, that I hope those of us in this room and those that we know can actually, looking forward in the next 5 years, 10 years, we will make the difference. And so together, let's embrace this program, and it's great for Film Victoria to have the initiative to work with the fellowship in bringing it together and to find out, to tell us about the guidelines tonight. So thank you, Film Victoria, for making it possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And of course, thanks to all of the Natalie Miller Fellowship team. So now we're just going to have a little bit of a chat with two very inspirational women as a way of exploring different pathways into leadership roles. Our first guest is the General Manager of Studios at Walt Disney Company for Australia and New Zealand, Jo Bladen. Jo, would you like to come up? Jo is part of Disney's local leadership team, managing distribution and marketing of animated features in live-action films from Disney, Pixar, Marvel and Lucasfilm Studios, with a focus on optimising sales and maximising the impact of franchise properties for both cinema and home entertainment release windows. She's also recently appointed as the chair of the Motion Picture Distributors Association of Australia, the first female appointment for this position. So a welcome appointment. Also joining us is the lovely Andrea Denholm. Many of you will know Andrea has produced and executive produced and written adult and children's television for close to 20 years, holding senior positions in major international and Australian production companies. She joined Princess Pictures in 2009 and has added to her string of credits the comedy series It's a Date, 8MMM Aboriginal Radio, and the landmark documentary series Sporting Nation, which John Clark helmed. Andrea is also currently one of the directors on the Australian Children's Television Foundation Board, and of course has a wealth of knowledge and advice to share. So please join me in welcoming both of them. So, Jo, do you want to sort of take us through your career pathway?
Whew. Gosh, it feels a long time ago, but after I left university, I went travelling for 2 years. So I packed my bags and I was off. And I can say with absolute confidence, it's probably the best thing that I ever did, and best for me personally, and also I think best for my career. I met people from all walks of life, very kind people, very scary people, especially in certain parts of the US. So, and most importantly, I laughed a lot. I had a lot of fun while I was travelling, and that was great. But then back to reality, back to a grey and wet London. But I'd studied marketing. I loved marketing. I had a passion for the consumer and for their needs and what they wanted. And I found a job actually in the games industry. So it's interesting you have a female focus there as well. In the booming 90s in the games industry, it was the most amazing place to be. We had a lot of fun. We had some great times, and it was the best first job I could ever have. But interesting enough, the games industry went up very quick and it went down very quick as well in that period. And I actually got made redundant from Sega. At the time, I was absolutely devastated, and it's a low moment for anybody if anybody's ever been made redundant. But I must say, I woke up, I brushed up, I got out interviewing again, and I got the top job ever. So I got a job at Disney, and I've been there 18 years now. So from that moment of darkness, I actually got something much better and much stronger for me personally as well. So from those kind of experiences, you can get real positive experiences as well. So that's something really to remember. So Disney's thrown me a lot of challenges, a lot of new experiences, a lot of massive frustrations. It's a big corporation as well, but a lot of laughter and tears along the way, and it's really defined my career now for the last 18 years. Just one little bit of aside, when I was interviewing for Disney, I interviewed for a music company as well. I turned down the job at the music company, who then went on to sign One Direction. So I'm marketing One Direction. I was like, I always look back now and think, where would I have been if I'd have taken that job? But anyway, I love the role in the film industry, so very pleased.
Thank you, Jo. That's a great summary. Andrea, what was your journey?
Well, it started so all through school, secondary school, I was convinced that I would be a doctor, a paediatrician. And then when I got to year 12, to my father's horror, I decided I wanted to be an actress. And go to NIDA and name in lights and everything. And my dad, interestingly, introduced me to a whole lot of people who had done law degrees and then moved into creative industries. He was very sneaky. And he said, this is something to have behind you in between Oscar-winning roles. So I'd listened, and I thought, I'll be 22 when I finish law and economics, and then I'll go to NIDA. So with some life experience and a lot of university kind of shenanigans behind me. So I studied law and economics, and by 5 years later, I was desperate to earn some money. The dream of being an actress had faded, and I wouldn't have been very good at it anyway. So I joined a very big commercial law firm where I learnt an enormous amount and worked with some pretty amazing people. After about 4 years, I worked in sort of commercial and financing law. After about 4 or 5 years of that, I was over it, and I had that sort of high school acting yearning had transformed into a desire for a more creative career. So at that point, but I had no idea how to do that. I knew I wanted to work in film and television. I didn't really know what a producer was. So I sought at that point some career counselling from a really amazing woman because I was at that point ready to sort of, jump ship and go and work in a bookshop or something. And she said, use the skills that you have already acquired. It's really important that you use those to find a job somewhere and then upskill. And she said you'll go into an environment where you're valuable and you can learn things that you want to learn about the film and television industry. From there, you'll go into a production company and then you'll be a producer. And I was like, really? And it happened just like that. It's quite amazing. So, my dad at the time, when I said I was leaving the law firm, was like, oh, really? It was like me, I was running off to join the circus. And I said, well, it's your fault. You've raised 3 very headstrong, independent daughters, so you only have yourself to blame. So I went from this big city law firm to a medium-sized firm that had a fantastic media, film and television practice. I was there for a few years. I learnt a lot. The partner that I worked for was the chairman of Film Finance Corporation, as it was. And then I went to a production company where this is where the kind of luck came in, I think. So I went in as their head of business affairs, and they were making a series called Sea Change, which probably a lot of you are too young to remember, but it was about a lawyer in a big city law firm who had a big career change. So Andrew Knight and Deb Cox, who created the series, asked me, as well as raising the money for it and doing the legal work, to be involved in it creatively. And that was like hitting the jackpot. So over the 3 series of Sea Change, I executive produced, story produced, and co-wrote some episodes and learnt from 2 of the best in the business. And so by the end of the 3 series, I'd left the law well and truly behind me and was, had enough credits to call myself a producer. I continued to work with Deb and Andrew on a whole lot of other productions, and I had children along the way. And after maybe 15 years, I felt like I was navel-gazing a bit, so I went and worked for a year in philanthropy. And then Laura Waters and Princess Pictures kind of lured me back to the dark side. And here I am.
And aren't we lucky?
Summary.
But a couple of great tips in there, that whole thing of listening to your gut instinct about following your passion, what really interests you, something really relevant.
I think building on the skills you have is probably good as well, to be conscious of what you can do and what you can contribute.
Yeah. So successful women are often accused or labelled as being ambitious, like it's a bad thing. And I'm interested to explore, when you started out having done your tertiary studies, did you feel that you were ambitious then at that time, and how has ambition taken you along your career path?
Yeah, ambition's quite interesting because I think it's hard to explain. It's kind of part of your behaviour, so I don't know if it's conscious or not as well. So I'm ambitious and I wanted to progress my career, but it wasn't a linear path. So I think one of the advice is it's a stepping stone to get you somewhere else, but don't rush it. Don't rush that success. Be prepared to go sideways. You sometimes have to step back to go forward as well. So I think you need to be flexible, agile, and sometimes humble as well in what you do. And you definitely learn from your mistakes and those around you, and you can make better decisions for it. So ambition's I was ambitious when I left. I went off travelling, but I think it's kind of like the choices you make will then really drive you forward as well. So.
Andrea, thanks, Jo. Andrea, you had a rather interesting experience with ambition, didn't you?
Well, I did. I never thought of myself as ambitious because it does have particular connotations, and I guess to me it's sort of making success the thing that drives you, which it never did with me. And in fact, when I left the first law firm I was at, the partner said to me, in my experience, success follows interest, not the other way around, which I've always thought was a very good piece of advice. But I did, at one point, when I was a mid-level lawyer, ask the partner that I worked with when he thought I might be ready for senior associateship, and he glared at me and said, "You are so ambitious," as if it was an insult. And I thought, you would never say that to a man who asked that question. And so it was, it hasn't really factored in for me. Other things have, passion, and I think the key is to be really good at the job that you're doing at the time. and the rest will follow, I think, rather than being too sort of driven by the idea of success.
And so did you sort of set a series of goals for yourself once you'd kind of worked out where you were going?
I certainly did when I had the advice about how to move from like one profession into another, I guess. I had very clear goals, and that was very useful. But I think it's a combination of setting goals and having a plan, and also, as Jo said, being agile, taking some risks, being prepared to change your mind, follow your instincts, and also at times just pat yourself on the back and say, what I'm doing right now is really good and I'm doing really well at it. That's important as well.
You can set goals, but they don't always work out.
Well,
So-
you had a goal and it was within grasp, wasn't it?
Which one?
The one to be the director, where it was right in your hand.
It was right in my hands. Because I did have a goal to be a director, and it was driven a little bit by my life stage, which is because I had children as well, and I was like, I want to be a director before I have kids. And I got a bit obsessed with it, which is dangerous. I'd worked really hard, and it came up. Job came up. I was like, yes, it's mine. They're going to call me in. They called me in the office and told me they were splitting the job in two. So yes, I became a director, but I lost a lot of responsibility with that decision, and I had to work alongside somebody who, frankly, I was struggling with. In that moment, I was hurt. My pride was hurt. It hurt my career definitely because it slowed me down to get that one foot on the ladder a bit more. But I learnt a hard emotional lesson that day, and I realised it's not all about me. Things did work out. Things worked out right. I enjoyed my job. I worked hard at it, and that's what got me ahead in the future as well.
And Andrea, there was someone you worked with who gave you a good tip.
Well, I think I said it before, which is exactly that, to just do the job you're doing at the time as well as you can do it, and definitely have an eye to the future and set goals. That's important. But sometimes they're easier to formulate than others, and that's okay, if it's not particularly clear at a point in time.
So role models, Jo, were there particular standouts for you?
I've had lots of really great role models for good and bad, and women and men as well, actually interesting. So I've had some female bosses who I've gone, I won't do it like that. Remind myself, don't do it like that. And same with men. And I've learned a lot from all of my bosses along the way, actually, to be honest, both positive and negative. Also, all the peers around me. We had a very strong executive team in the UK that I worked with, and people from different disciplines can be very insightful to help you as well. So finance directors, operations directors. And my team always inspire me as well. So the people that work for me, they go on to do great things. I've had people who work for me be directors now, other parts of the world, leading companies. It really inspires me and makes me feel proud to see those people in those positions. It's great.
It's very rewarding, isn't it?
Yeah,
too?
absolutely.
Yeah. Andrea.
Being tested.
Yeah.
Check my notes.
Well, you've had that great experience, I suppose, of working with a lot of men. Do you think that there's a bit of a difference in male role models and female role models?
I thought hard about this, and it's so difficult to generalise, and the two probably most powerful influences on my career have been men. So I think there are role models who you like to emulate, and there are many of those in my life, particularly many women, and women who are younger than me, older than me, who do different things. I think perhaps the distinction I draw, and I didn't send this to Jenni, so I'll just say it, is the difference between a role model and someone who champions you. And I think that's a really important thing to have in your life. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but someone who will, be your champion and that person might change at different points in your career, but it's incredibly valuable.
Thanks. So it's not all just about good looks and intelligence. It's also about skills, isn't it? So, Jo, what skills would you recommend are really essential in terms of navigating the screen industry and achieving success?
So I think the company Disney could talk about, or Bob Iger talks about diversity a lot, and having different opinions, different points of views are really, really important to any company, any big corporation. And I think we also, going back a step, I think the important thing is when we have these conversations, we need to include men, because unless men understand the issues that we're going through, I don't think that they'll help us to address them. So again, we need to include men, and we've got one.
You've got one lonely soldier here.
Anyone else?
One of the nicest ones around, I might add.
Yeah. So we've included you, Ross. And of course, women quite often are their own worst enemy as well. So a woman quite often won't go for a job unless they think they're 90% qualified for the job, whereas a man will go, ooh, I know half of it, I'll go and give it a shot. So I think we've got to learn to be, that we do have the skills. When you go for another job, you need to stretch and learn. It's about development. Don't be afraid if you don't think you 100% can do that job. It's about learning and moving forward as well. So you need the confidence to go for roles. You need the confidence to develop and stretch yourself wherever you can. There's lots of, I think in later questions we'll go on to say, because there's some really important things I want to make sure that we cover, but probably in the later questions.
So Andrea, you got your law degree. Was that the end of study for you? Did you run off and do an MBA or?
No. I didn't. I did do a graduate diploma at Melbourne Uni in media and broadcasting law, which wasn't directly relevant to what I did, but it did give me confidence and an understanding of policy issues. I mean, knowledge is a good thing, but it really depends on the role and your aspirations. And I do think that it's particularly valuable for women to upskill formally if it makes them feel more confident in going for jobs or. But it's horses for courses. I think, if you're a really creative person, to do an MBA might, be the death of that. So it depends, but they can be very valuable, but they have to be chosen carefully, I think. I used all of my formal studies in some way or another. But it is horses for courses, no pun intended.
An example from Disney is probably in movie marketing in particular, we use social interaction and team collaboration more than anything else. We're what is considered a kind of integrated company. So we get everybody together to brainstorm ideas. So it's kind of the sum is truly greater than the parts in our marketing business. And that means a hands-on kind of experience.
So it's sort of that, it's also sort of realising that, there are many short courses out there that people can do, and indeed, expensive MBAs aren't necessarily the answer to everything, but it's also that curiosity and that interest in lifelong learning that plays quite a part, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. There's a great, I have to quote from Walt Disney, because we always do, anybody from Disney. So Walt Disney, we keep moving forward, opening new doors and doing new things because we are curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. And I think we talk a lot in Disney internally about being curious and challenging. Go to work, ask questions, challenge yourself, challenge your team around you to just be better and strive for better every day. And I think that's something that's embedded in our culture as well, to be curious. And with it, you'll challenge yourself, you'll do more interesting things, and you'll just get better and better in what you do and the decisions you make, really.
Thank you. Andrea, coaches, mentors along the way?
Well, as I said before, I had some formal career planning at the sort of big transition phase from lawyer to producer, and that was great. As I said, I didn't know what a producer was, and I had to sort of research that, and I spoke to people, and I put myself in the path of opportunities, sometimes embarrassed myself by how little I knew, but people were very generous, and I had quite a bit of chutzpah, I guess, which is, not a bad thing, and, I guess sort of things fell into place in that way. And since then I have had some other sort of particular points in my career, I've sought professional counselling, career counselling coaching of some sort. So I think it is incredibly valuable, and I think it's much more of it's almost par for the course in bigger organisations now, but in our industry, which is no longer a cottage industry but has still some remnants of that, it's very difficult for women to afford or to access. And I think that's something very important to be looked at, because it's really valuable. I mean, if you need expertise in an area, you go and seek the expert, and there are experts who can help you with this stuff.
Jo, what's your experience been as you've moved into more senior roles?
So I'm a massive supporter of mentors and specialist coaches in particular as you get more senior. So everybody in this room should have a mentor of some kind or other. It doesn't have to be in the industry, or even if it's just somebody to go for a coffee with and say, I felt like this today, what do you think? And somebody will give you a different perspective you've never really thought of, because quite often you can be emotional irrationally and then blurt something out, and somebody will go, whoa, if you just know how to take a breath and react to that. And usually it's the most, not necessarily the most obvious person that can give you that advice as well. So think about a mentor. A mentor doesn't have to be a professional person. It can just be somebody who understands what you're going through. And mentor, we have a lot of mentors in the business, and I know it's not, because we're a big corporation we do, and it's not usual for people to have the mentor system, but a mentor can be anybody that you trust. And then as you get more senior, specialist coaches become massively important, because then you've got to know your emotions, understand them, and restrain them, or use them in the right way positively. So we all get upset, and men and women get upset, and you can get emotional outbursts. You have to be able to contain that and then positively push it out in the right way to gain your self-respect. So understand your emotions. You need to believe in yourself, and a coach can help you with that and help you understand how you do that. Know when to speak and when to listen. So again, a lot of people will think the best way to do is just keep talking. It's not always the right way. You'd know that in law. Stay quiet.
Say nothing.
Yeah. And then a big thing I learned was always assume positive intent, which sounds a bit strange, but it's really easy to jump to the negative when somebody says something straight away. Oh, they're saying that because they don't like me, and it's like you've got to rationalise that this is a business situation. And so I've lived on always assume a positive intent for a long time, and actually that came from somebody that I worked with in Italy. Interesting enough. So
yeah, it's a great thought to keep with you as you operate, and certainly always putting yourself in the other person's shoes to look at what's going on. It's always a two-sided thing, and our emotion often does get in the way. So it's certainly if you're working in an environment where you believe that people are coming from a good place, not a bad place, and then you look at that two-sided aspect, it really helps you bring things back into perspective. Yeah. The other thing that I also learned along the way was, learning not to react immediately, learning that even though you got that person who really irritated you, and you spend your time typing out that email, venting, and then don't press send. Because, the next day you read that email and you go, probably a really good thing I didn't, but I know a really smart way. So it's allowing that time to let the emotion dissipate, and then let the smart, rational person come to the fore and work out whether the email's the strategy or it's another strategy.
Yes.
Jo, what other strategies do you use?
So communication and collaboration, I think we talked about that. That's very much how I run my team and the business. But one of my mantras is trust. I think it's really important. It's a very powerful behaviour. You have to trust me, you have to trust each other, and you have to trust the people around you, and you have to trust yourself that you're doing a good job as well. It sounds quite basic, but it's interesting. When you present that, people are like, nervous straight away. Is she kind of pointing at me? But it's building that trust. If you trust each other, you can challenge each other. You can say things that some people might get upset by, but they know that if they trust you, that it's a positive thing, and we're all trying to be better and striving to be better. And that makes better decisions, more exciting and dynamic organisation at the end of the day. So just that trust, build that trust with the people you work in, and I think it's a much healthier environment to be in.
Indeed. Resilience. Andrea, it's a long road. to the
It's a
top
long
in this
road.
industry, isn't it?
It is.
What kind of setbacks have you encountered along the way, and how have you used your resilience skills to get you through that?
Oh, I think there's probably two answers to that. The specific example is relatively, or maybe mid-career. I had to deal with a very hostile male colleague, and at the first time that sort of hostility and undermining came out, my reaction was to leave the meeting, go to the toilet and cry for about 3 hours, which is not good. But I thought my career was completely over. This lovely woman who was also in the meeting came and kind of consoled me. She was a bit bewildered about what had happened, and I seriously thought my whole career was ruined that day. It wasn't. No one really noticed. You put your fringe down and sort of cold water on your face, but it made me tougher and more determined, and it also taught me to know when to ask for help. So I think those things are sort of rare, but they do happen, and you do have to dig deep, and that's good. And just generally being a producer, you have to be resilient because you get knocked back a lot by actors, by financiers. You have to have a natural resilience all the time. But it's all kind of stuff that happens and you deal with it and none of it crushes you. I think the biggest thing that I have to deal with come from within, really. My own, occasionally like the self-doubt that sets in when something doesn't go right, or the lack of self-confidence at particular times, and that's not, it's a hard thing to understand, and I raise it because so many women have raised it with me. And I think it's really important. It's referred to in the Gender Matters report, anecdotal evidence about this. And I think the anecdotal evidence is overwhelming, and I don't know what. And it's not just in our industry; it's across the board. And it is that 90%. You can do 90% of the job, you won't go for it. I think it's a really important thing for women to work together to overcome, and work with men to overcome. I think, and talking about it and having initiatives that might assist with that are really important. Oh, the other obvious thing I think is, in my case, juggling family and professional obligations. That always comes with a fair bit of hand-wringing and guilt and, various other unhelpful emotions. But, we get through that, I guess, somehow.
I am conscious of time because I want to make sure that there is opportunities for you to network, because I think that's very much an important part of tonight as well. I know there's a couple of particular points you wanted to emphasise, Jo, so we might sort of run to that first.
Yeah. So just as kind of a summary, there was a few key things. So sorry, I've got my notes here. I bought them on purpose so I don't forget things, because I'm getting a bit old. So, in this today's competitive environment, we all know that we have to put the right person in the right role, in any open role, and that doesn't matter who it is. It has to be the right person. It can be man or woman. So please keep that in mind. It's not about, this role is potentially more for a man than a woman. We put the right person in the role. You need to take gender out of the equation. We shouldn't talk about it. It doesn't matter. I know that's easy for me to say, but it's true. It's the right person who can do the role well. There's been a lot of talk over the years about leaning in. We've all heard that phrase used before. It's not just about leaning in, it's about knowing what you're going to say when you do lean in, and being really confident and sure of what you're going to say. That comes back to, I've mentioned it before, self-awareness and confidence. Know what you want, what you stand for. My boss spends a lot of time telling me, and she's a woman as well, by the way, so that's good, and she's based in Australia. What do you stand for, and have the confidence to express yourself. Believe in yourself and understand who you are and how you want to be represented. You've got the ability to do the job, otherwise you wouldn't be in that position anyway, so don't even worry about that one. That one can go off the agenda for the start. And have very clear goals. Trust your judgment, but people need to understand what you stand for personally. Some of the others were, as you're progressing in your jobs, you have to show a bit of authenticity as well. So everybody has a bad hair day. Make sure people can see that. You know, you're not always going to be perfect and say the right thing and do the right thing. So show people that vulnerability as well. As you get more senior, you have to control that because people are looking up to you. So you have a very big shadow. But that's only when you start to get, you know, in really senior positions where you're running big teams. Don't underestimate the power of a sense of humour. We're all people. We're in an amazing industry. It's fun as well. So we've talked about being curious and open-minded. So the last three things I've probably got to say is own your space. This is what I'm capable of and this is what I expect. You must be brave as well, as we all need to be, and the same goes for men as well. And don't be afraid of speaking up or speaking out. So really, to finish off, is think about what you are, what you represent, what you want, and go for it. You can do it, and you will achieve it. That is definite. So just go for it.
Andrea, anything you'd like to add?
Well, I think I'd just like to comment on the idea, the merit principle, which I am a great believer in, but I think it only works when accompanied by a fairness principle. And there's something wrong when at emerging levels of a career, men and women are there in equal numbers, and as they rise through the ranks, the number of men swell and the number of women shrinks. So we're not on an equal playing field, therefore. And I think that's something that does need to be addressed, because I'm all for merit, but it has to be, the playing field has to be equal. And we should be looking at ways of doing that. I think I hate the fact that a woman and a man doing the same job, the man gets paid more. That drives me crazy. I think we have to address those sorts of things. So I agree with you. I agree with so much of what you've said, but I do think the gender thing is something to be discussed and something for our industry and other industries to address squarely. It's great that this initiative is doing that. The other thing, I think, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of senior women, and those relationships have been really important to me. And I think it's because, which is why I think promoting women into more senior positions in the industry is so valuable, because you can assume I think there's a trust and a respect and an understanding that you take for granted when you're dealing with a woman. Perhaps it is that assumption of, I can't remember how you expressed it, but assuming that the good positive intention. It's easier to do that. I'm generalising, of course, but I do think it's easier to do that often when you're dealing with women. So I think the more that are up there, the better. And I suppose I'd just say that, you know, I'd agree with everything you've said. You know, keep in mind that it is a privilege to work in this industry, warts and all. Be confident in what brought you here and what you can contribute. If you aren't feeling confident, find ways to find it. Find a mentor, have some coaching, upskill, put yourself in the path of opportunity, be open and be generous. Ask for help if you need it. If you genuinely feel discriminated against, speak out and help come up with constructive ways to deal with that. Take risks, trust your instincts, and I think find a champion, and if you're in a position to do so, be a champion to another woman. So,
and Jo, I'm just going to get you to quickly touch on one last thing, because one of the ways that you can all kind of, you know, seek to have influence elsewhere is looking for those opportunities, perhaps on board roles, you know, or in working committees or industry organisations. And I just thought you made some really good points about some of the skills that that people should be aware of when occupying those.
So like the MPDAA,
yes,
you mean, yeah. So I'm fairly early on the MPDAA, so, and the only woman, which was a big shock, because I didn't realise. They were like, oh, you're the only woman on the board. But I think diplomacy, great communication skills, very, you know, rational, solid, thoughtful decision making as well, because it's interesting if people say, oh, isn't it intimidating? When some of these people have been in the industry a long, long time, they know each other personally and socially as well. But no, if I'm saying something that's rational, logical, and right, and up for discussion, then I've got equally a place at the table with all of them. So I think the boards are really great places to get a profile, to do the right, to, you know, again, I've kind of underestimated, because I've naturally just gone, right, I'm I'm the general manager of the studio, so I belong here, but actually it's important that there's a woman on that board and that I can come and talk here. I can go to the movie convention and stand up and talk. And usually it's a big stream of men coming up and talking. So again, it's really important that myself and Catherine, my boss, come up and do those talks and play a part in that as well. So please, if anybody in the audience as well wants me to come and talk to them or to talk at a function, I'm quite open to do that because I think it's really important, and on the mentor side of things as well. So I think we play an important part on those boards, and to say, yes, there's a woman on the board.
Thank you. And Andrea's also on the ACTF board, so if you want to nobble her afterwards and ask her what that experience is like, I'm sure she'd be most generous. Sadly, not long enough. We are going to, this is being recorded, so there will be an edit of this, and there are some great things that both Andrea and Joe put into preparation of the answers, so we're going to assemble those so that you've also got sort of something of a transcript to look at too, because there's just some fantastic tips. So thank you all both for your generosity, and if we can give them a round of applause.
So, who's eligible? You need to be a female resident of Victoria, and you will need 10 years of screen industry experience in the Australian or international screen industry, and you need to be able to demonstrate an ongoing commitment to seeking a leadership position in the Australian screen industry. In terms of the assessment process, funding is competitive and applications will be assessed by a panel comprising of up to 6 members, 3 from Film Victoria, which will be Jenni or her delegate, and 3 members from the Natalie Miller Fellowship. Stage 1 means that you would need to submit an application form to us by the 6th of May. This form apparently goes online tomorrow, I'm told. The form lists the key questions to be addressed, and you'll be required to complete an activity plan, a budget, and submit a CV plus 2 references. And the references are meant to be targeted to people saying that you have leadership potential. The shortlisting of applications will hopefully be completed within 6 weeks, and then stage 2, shortlisted applicants will be asked to meet with the assessment panel to discuss their proposed opportunity and their leadership aspirations. Finally, you should be advised of the application outcomes within 12 weeks, within 12 weeks of the original application deadline. That's me, getting closer. How to be competitive. The best way to be competitive is to address the assessment criteria. When assessing applications, the panel will consider your level and type of experience in the screen industry, your recognised achievements and current or previously held positions of influence or leadership, your leadership aspirations and the potential of those to redress the gender imbalance in decision-making roles and positions of influences within the Australian screen industry. We'll also be looking at whether the identified opportunity that you're proposing will directly improve your potential to achieve those aspirations and its suitability to meet your specific needs. Finally, we'll be looking at the level of funding and the appropriateness of your budget. While they're up to $10,000, if you have a less one, it'll be considered. It doesn't mean it's more competitive. We just want to have something that's justified for what your plan is. The types of activities, that we discuss. As applicants, you're responsible for identifying the activities to support your career progression. Each opportunity will be unique to you. We are not being prescriptive, but some of the examples we've thought of that could include would be training, short professional development courses. Might be a company director's course if you're trying to get onto a board, or finance for non-finance managers if you're moving into a management position or pursuing an executive position. There are many other business and leadership training programs available that might suit your specific need. We'll also be looking at placements. You might be able to negotiate an opportunity to work with a key Australian or international screen business or person for a period of time or on a specific project. We funded some lower level placements in the past. We did a really successful one recently with a Victorian Games programmer who went to work with a company in London and learnt about project managing and leading a team that she was able to use and bring back into her own business here. And while that's a lower level placement in terms of the calibre of the participant and the outcome, you may well be able to come up with high level placements that have a leadership focus. Also, we'll be looking at mentoring. Your development plan could include a self-devised mentoring program where you aim to access one or more leaders in the field to regularly meet and discuss ideas and career progression. And as we've talked about before, good mentors focus on your total development and will probably challenge you to move beyond your comfort zone, both good things. They can also facilitate your growth by sharing resources and networks. As we've mentioned, as Andrea indicated before, coaching can be important. Coaches can help develop and improve self-awareness, knowledge and capabilities towards a specific goal or end. And they can work with you to develop a process, a tool set or a discipline to assist you to reach that goal. Finally, travel. Opportunities can be here or overseas. For instance, if you had proposed a mentor who was in Sydney, then a couple of face-to-face meetings to supplement monthly Skype calls over a year would be acceptable. And if your ideal placement opportunity was an overseas company, then that could also be considered. However, applications where funding is substantially weighted towards travel and accommodation costs will need to clearly demonstrate its necessity to achieve the skills and development outcomes. Unfortunately, Joe's suggestion to travel the world for 2 years is probably going to fall outside the scope. You know, and while we're on that, other exclusions are going to be in company startup costs, specific projects or production costs, full-time study, that kind of thing. So the important one is the key dates. So the guidelines are available. Applications closed 26th of April. 6th of June will let you know if you're to be come in for an interview, and we'd like people, we might be able to do them by Skype, but we would rather people be available to do that face-to-face. Then finally by the 8th of July, we hope to have these announced and up and running. In terms of that application process, it's always good to give us a chat through it as you're going through it. The main points of contact will not be the bloke with the beard, but will be Madeline Getson, wherever Madeline is, if she'd like to stand up, and then Erin Bretherton. So please introduce yourself to them during the networking events, and they'll be the first point of contact, and good luck with it all.
In closing, I do want to emphasise that the networking opportunity that follows is just as an important part of tonight. It's where you get to introduce yourself to somebody that you don't know, but could potentially make a connection relative to where you want to go in your career pathway. So put your inhibitions aside and let the real you shine. Go out there and meet as many of your wonderful colleagues as possible. Can I just one more time thank Sue, the team at Natalie Miller. They're just wonderful women. They do fantastic work, and not only in partnering with us, but their continued efforts to challenge the status quo and to raise the profile of talented women practitioners. And of course, as always, I have to thank the team at Film Victoria, and in particular Sophie Treblecoe and Adila O'Boyle for helping put tonight's event together. Thank you all for coming, and clearly I wish you every success. Please join us out in the gallery foyer for some refreshments. Thank you.